Race family, guys, hope you're all doing amazing. Welcome back to another video. I haven't uploaded in a couple of days. The last time we filmed was last week Friday when we took the Supra to the drag strip, ran the 737 at 187 miles an hour. I uploaded that video on Sunday, and I think on Monday I did the Spanish version. So I was a day late. I know Sundays are for Spanish. I was a day late. Those are the last videos I uploaded. As soon as we finished that, I actually brought my wife and daughter to North Florida. We came to SeaWorld. We're gonna be visiting Busch Gardens, just having a nice family time. I always say, man, for every racing trip, we gotta take a family trip. So although my girls truly enjoy racing with me, every time we go out racing and just, I work on the car extensively, I always like to kind of disconnect, pull away, go enjoy the simple things in life, show our daughter something new she hasn't seen before, and then we go back to racing hardcore again. But anyhow, today, given that it's Throwback Thursday, I figured I don't have the Supra here with me. I can't record anything with the Supra or some of our cars, so I figured together we take a trip down memory lane. This video, by now, you would have seen the thumbnail, you would have seen the title. Guys, let's talk about the first car I ever owned. And that was a yellow Chevy Cobalt SS supercharged. Let's get right into it. All right, guys, there's only one way to tell a story, and that's from the beginning and telling all of it. I considered today kind of giving you guys just a quick rundown of all the sports cars that I've had leading up to the Supra, or even cars that I've had along with the Supra or after the Supra. But I've had so many cars that, although I want to talk to you guys about all of them, I figured if I did one video for all of them, I wouldn't really have enough time to kind of just share how special they were for me, why I got them, what modifications I did, what led me to get out of them. I kind of wanted to further tell stories, so instead what we'll do is maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks, I'll do the best that I can. On Thursdays, I'll upload videos talking about some of these previous cars. Like I said a minute ago, today we'll focus on our Cobalt. You keep seeing me look over because, man, I'm looking at all these pictures that I have here. And I'm sure there was a lot more. I've lost a bunch over the years. I had a lot of videos of racing the Cobalt that I can't find anymore. But let me get this camera back in position. That's better. I have a lot of videos. I can't find any videos of me racing this car. But anyhow, let's tell the story of the Cobalt from the beginning. So I want to say I got that car when I was 15 years old. So I was born in 1990. For me to be 15, that was like 2005, maybe late 2005. It was a 2006 Cobalt. We bought that brand new, 0 miles. I had no credit. I don't come from a wealthy family, but here's the story behind me getting a brand new car. So one day, my dad at the time, my parents divorced when I was very young, so my dad at the time was in the business of flipping cars. He'd go to the auction, buy cars, and flip them. And we lived on a busy street, so my sister actually lived next door. And he one time parked this Infiniti car. I forget what it was, an Infiniti J30, I30. I remember it had it was like a letter and some numbers in the back. It wasn't a G35, it wasn't nothing like that. It was before G35s were a thing. And he had this car there. Again, it was an average car. It was nothing special, but at this point I wanted anything. So I remember telling my mom was shopping for a car for me at the time, and I remember telling her, Mom, you know what, I'm cool with that car, I'll take that one, just talk to Dad, see if he can kind of work out the price, or maybe you guys can split the cost, right? As my mom was going to be buying this car for me, but I was like, oh, call Dad, see if he wants to help out with the purchase of my first car. Maybe you guys can split the cost, work something out. I'll take that one, I'm happy with that one. I would have took anything, really. And I don't think that call went too well. Either he didn't want to help much, or long story short, my mom got upset and said, you know what, forget it, I'll get you a car on my own. She basically said, you don't even need that old car, we'll get you something nicer. Like, what would you like, pretty much? I think almost in revenge. Like, she really wanted to prove a point on her own, give me something nice. And I was like, oh boy, this sounds like a plan. So at the time, cars that I looked up to, cars that I really liked, were either an SRT4, because I mean, they were expensive for a teenage boy, but they were relatively affordable, either an ST4 or I really like these Cobalt SSs. And the reason I like these is they were supercharged. I really was into that, and these had just rolled out, so they weren't that popular. Anytime I would go to a car meet with my brother-in-law, there was every color ST4 under the sun were all there. There was tons and tons of them. So although the Cobalt was the ST4 was a more capable car, there was just so many of them. I wanted something different. And at the time, believe it or not, I was already dating my wife. So we started dating when we were 14 years old. We were already together, and I kind of tossed up the options to her, and she liked the Cobalt better, and I said, you know what, the Cobalt it is. We went to the dealership that day. There was only like 2 at the dealership, and they were actually both yellow. I didn't really have a preference in color. If there was a lot of colors there, maybe I wouldn't have picked yellow, but now as I look back, I love that it was yellow, and I would love to own a yellow car again in the future, just because I have such nice memories of owning this car. But anyhow, let me run you guys through some of the pictures. Here is the picture of one of the first days of me having this car. There's 15-year-old Pedro. You can see me there with the black tank top. And this is some family and friends that were actually checking out the car for the first time. This is me possibly washing it for the first time. And this car, man, I remember buying it, and on my drive home, I thought I was gonna cook the clutch. Again, I just knew to go fast, right? At the time, that was my mentality. And that still is a lot of people's mentality in today's world. I thought to go fast. Most sports cars came stick shift only, like the Subaru, let's say the WRX STI was manual only, the SD4 manual only, the Vipers manual only, the Corvette Z06s, like the best version, manuals. All the true sports cars were all manual, so it's understandable why everybody thought to go fast you need a manual. Autos aren't fast, and that's kind of the era when I grew up in. So the Cobalt SS Supercharger was only a manual car, and I knew it was a sports car. I knew I had to have it. So I got this car. It was a 5-speed manual. Again, on my drive home, I drove it home by myself. Nervous as heck driving this thing home. I remember I did pretty good all the way up to leading up to getting off of the freeway. There was a huge hill. When I stopped on this hill, and the second I was holding the clutch, put it in first, the second I would let go of the brake to go for the gas, the car would start rolling back, and I would panic. I would rev it really high, and it'd start bunny hopping all the way out of the intersection. It was crazy. But within a couple of days, I was already racing it. Within maybe, I don't remember, my first 2 months, I was already at the drag strip. 15 years old at the drag strip. I would borrow a friend's ID that was overage, and I would tech the car in. I would either do that or give the car to friends of mine that were overage for them to tech it in, and they would give me the bracelet, and then I would race. So, man, I have stories on stories with this car, but it really meant so much to me. This is actually a car I would love to own again. So, and the good thing is they're crazy affordable. You can find a supercharged Cobalt like that. It was a 2006. You can find that car for $4 grand, $5 grand, and in good shape. For a lot less, you can find one that's beat up pretty good. But anyhow, first time I go to the track, right? I think I had like a little filter on the intake. So I cut off the factory box and I put a little filter just on the tip, something really cheap. I think I bought the filter for like 30 or 40 bucks at AutoZone. And then I had a little muffler I bought on eBay for 75 bucks. I had this muffler welded on the back. So again, all these mods are really inexpensive because I was that broke. The car payment, my parents, we financed this car. The car payment was 362 bucks. At the time I had part-time jobs, so I would work and pay towards the car. If I was ever short, my mom would spot me, which is extremely generous of her. But from an early age, man, from the second I got this car, I was already working. I don't want to get off topic, but my mom had a clothing store, and I would work with her at the clothing store. In that same plaza, there was it was called Celebrations. It was like a wedding, quince, sweet 16 type of like a decoration party type of event. So I would work with them on weekends, helping them set up, break down. Occasionally I would do DJ work for them. Right after that, or maybe right along that, my brother-in-law had a tow truck company. I would drive tow trucks so crazy late at night, like midnight, and I had school next morning. I would be out driving this tow truck. From around this age, I just knew racing was my thing. I quit school sports. I wanted to just modify cars, work to have money to keep modifying them, pay for my cars, so on and so forth. So anyhow, let's talk about the first time I go drag racing. So I get to the drag strip, right? I get to the drag strip. My brother-in-law was there. I remember I went to the drag strip that day with all of my brother-in-law's friends. It was like 15 of us that all drove there together, and I thought it was the coolest thing. Everyone had like sports cars. We had such a blast. But I get there, I go up there for my first pass. Whew, as I'm up there, I remember loving that. I knew I loved racing, but I was nervous as heck. I think mostly because the car was a manual. I'd only had it for like 2 months. It was launching it from a dig. By then I was already an expert at roll racing. I would run from a second gear roll, first gear roll, that was no problem. But launching it from a dig on a sticky track, I'd never done that before. But anyhow, man, in my opinion, that first pass was a total success. A little drop-in filter that probably did close to nothing, and a little muffler welded at the back. Catalytics, resonator, everything was still on there. The car on the first pass went a 14.6 at 90 something miles an hour. I forget, 97 or something like that. But a 14.6, I was pretty stoked. I couldn't believe I made it down the track. Before that pass started, I was saying I was at the line, I was a bit nervous. Boy, my foot, my left foot, my clutch foot, I remember it shaking like crazy. I'm sitting there holding it and my legs are just shaking. I was so nervous. And I remember telling myself, I was like, why are you getting nervous? Like, calm, you love this. Like, this is what you love to do. Calm down and enjoy it. But it was just so hard to just relax and enjoy the moment that I had my nerves getting the best of me. But man, that was crazy. But anyhow, 14.6, first rip, I'm happy as heck. I go back now the second time, I'm a little calmer. I'm like, man, I'm really feeling this. So second rip, 14.5, I was super stoked. I forget the mile an hour, but if I had to guess, maybe 97, 98. I don't even think it was 99, but somewhere in there, I run a 14.5. I'm like on cloud 9 now. So I go back up for my third and last run of the night. Now I'm like super confident. The nerves are gone. Now I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna power shift, because I would do that on the street all the time. So power shifting, if you guys are completely new to cars, would be shifting gears without letting go of the gas. So I would always do that with that car. I would just stay flat-footed the whole time through and just bang gears flat-footed. So I was like, I'm gonna do that. And for whatever reason, I guess my timing was just a little off and I missed third gear. So I missed third, got it back in a hurry. The car went a 14.7. So on that first track outing, I ran a 14.6, 5, then 7. And that was it. I was hooked. I would then go back every week. The track would be open on Wednesdays and Fridays. I don't think I would go both days. Maybe I did a couple of weeks, but for the most part, man, I would do the very best that I could to get to the track and keep running this car. I remember the first time I got into the 13s, it was the biggest deal for me. I finally broke into the 13s at over 100 mile an hour, went like 105 or 106. By then I had downsized the pulley to make the supercharger build more pounds of boost. What else? So I did a pulley swap, injectors, pulley, injectors, spark plugs. It was a little kit that this company sold. The company was called ZZ Performance, and they called it a stage 3. It was bringing the supercharger to 18 pounds of boost from like 12 with just changing the pulley. The injectors give it more fuel, spark plugs, a new belt, because now I guess the belt had to be shorter because the pulley was that much shorter. So it came with a new belt and a tune reflash. That's it. Those few little things. The kit was like $600, but I didn't even have $600. I remember my brother-in-law bought it for me for Christmas. So he buys me this, we get it installed. The car was a completely different car. It went like a 13.8, then it went a 13.7. I started getting faster and faster. I got it down to like 13.5 or 4 at like 106, 107. And then it was time for nitrous. So I think I have a picture here somewhere. Let me look it up. So you guys would have seen that first picture. Here it is. So it was time for nitrous, guys. This nitrous kit, I had an uncle that had nitrous on an Acura RXX, and he ended up selling the RXX. He wasn't using the kit. He gifted me the kit. So here I go, bam, I connect this nitrous kit. I felt so special, man, rolling around. By now I'm maybe 16. I had nitrous on my sports car. I thought I was the coolest kid in school. But anyhow, I went to my speed shop. I knew I wanted to spray because I wanted more power, but I wanted the least amount of nitrous. I didn't want to hurt this car. So I went to my speed shop. I asked them what the smallest shot they sold was, and it was a 35 shot. I said, perfect. 35 is just enough. I'll put it on there. And believe it or not, that 35 shot would really wake this car up. It was a dry shot, but 35 shot on a car, let's say pre-supercharger, pre-blower, man, it'll make that blower scream. The thing got way faster. I went from a 13.4 or 5 down to like, I think it was like 13.3. It wasn't really that much better, but listen to why. I would leave in first gear. No nitrous. And the car would be spinning. I would shift second gear, the car would spin. The second the car would stop spinning tire in second gear, I'd flick the nitrous on and it would spin again, almost to the top of second. Then I would run third and fourth gear. Really were the only gears where the nitrous was really helping the car out. And it wasn't even much of fourth. It was just mainly third gear. The car would go like 106 or 7 miles an hour in third. So I would run all of third and shift real quick to fourth, and the track would end. But I went from like 106 mile an hour to 111 mile an hour, running like that, like spinning a bunch. So whenever I would roll race somebody on the street, say from 50 mile an hour, and the car had good traction, 50, 60, on the nitrous, or even 45, somewhere in there with the nitrous, the car probably ran with cars that were like 115 trap cars. And back then, 115 was quick. That was faster than a C6 Corvette. That was faster than a bunch of sports cars. So, man, this car was a blast. Let me see what other pictures I have on here. So I showed you guys the nitrous one. This is a cool picture. I had this thing tinted out like crazy, like really dark tinted windows. I always rolled around with the sunroof open like that. It had the factory smoked wheels. This particular Cobalt had the Recaro seats, had the limited slip differential in the front. It was like the highest, the top of the line that they had. So that, here you can see a picture of the exhaust system that I had in the back. So at first I had, and this may have been it, I don't really remember, but at first I had just like a non-name brand little chrome pipe welded in the back. Later on I did a full 3-inch exhaust with an HKS high power muffler. The muffler was like 250 bucks, and then all the piping. I remember I spent like a good $1,000 on the exhaust system. It was larger diameter. So I remember I did that. I ended up taking the supercharger back out of the car, porting the supercharger, did a clutch and flywheel. Man, the list went on and on. I did a bunch of stuff. That little intake that I spoke about earlier, that was just for the first month or two. Then I did an actual cold air intake. These are all mods that I was buying as I was working. I did a B&M short throw shifter. I did an Ingalls, I think it was called, engine damper. Kind of, it was like this little shock that would hold the motor in place so it wouldn't rock as much, and it'll eliminate wheel hop and wheel spin. Not really wheel spin, but wheel hop. But man, the list went on and on. I started modifying this thing like crazy, taking it to car meets, car shows, drag racing events. Here goes another picture. This was a car wash that was near our house. Actually, in one of my latest videos, when I took Ernesto for the ride, the video where I opened the parachute on the street, as we're driving through this town, I did a burnout at an oil change place. That's actually this picture here. So this was 15 years ago, this picture. But this oil change place is a mobile car wash right next to it. Or not a mobile, but one of those machines that washes your car. I would go to that machine all the time with this car. But yeah, man, a lot of storytelling. So anyhow, let's finish the story really quick. So I would race it all the time. One day on that 35 shot of nitrous, listen to this story. I'll end the story here. One day I go to the drag strip with my wife. We get to the drag strip. It was one of the times I was gonna run the car on nitrous. I get the car teched in, I get to the state, to the line to race, and I turned on my bottle heater. So by now I realized, man, a bottle heater really increased bottle pressure, the car running even faster. So I turned on my bottle heater, and it wasn't like an automatic heater that would turn itself off. You had to manually turn it back off. So I turned it on, and as I'm sitting there waiting for the pressure to go up, out of nowhere, the biggest rainstorm, thunderstorm, it started pouring. The track lost power. They ended up obviously closing out the track. We couldn't race. So I get back in the car. I'm devastated. I couldn't race. I drive the car all the way back home. This is like a 35-minute drive back home. And as I'm like 5-10 minutes from our house, by now at this point it's not raining anymore. The streets are dry. So I'm like, man, I didn't get to race today. I'm gonna make a rip here on the street. And I remember I downshifted down to second gear and I floored it. When I tell you this thing screamed, this car had never felt so strong, especially from a roll like that. Man, it really threw us in the seat. It's taken off real strong. Second gear, third gear, I may have ran fourth. The second we come off the throttle, the engine no longer sounded the same. It sounded like a Subaru. It sounded like the muffler was underwater. You could hear a like it wasn't happy. So right away I'm like, oh my god, I heard it. I heard the engine. I'm telling my wife, I'm like, this isn't good. I broke it. And sure enough, it sounded terrible. I'm driving her to her house. I drop her off. Now I'm like, I'm feeling down. I'm devastated. I broke this car. And I drop off my wife at her house, and literally as she's like waving by and she goes to walk into her house, I'm driving away in first gear, and the freaking car sounded like it exploded. This bomb goes off, bam, whoosh, and I hear this noise. I don't think I was wearing my seatbelt. The second I heard that noise, I literally opened the door and jumped out the car. The car was maybe rolling like 3 or 4 miles an hour. It was just rolling away. I was like, I don't know what that was, but let it blow up on its own. I jumped out. Turns out I never turned off the bottle heater when we left the track, and the pressure, God knows how high it got, and that's the reason why I hurt the motor. The pressure was so crazy high that maybe the nitrous just hit a lot harder than it normally did, and it was enough to hurt the engine. And that explosion that we heard was, nitrous tanks have this safety seal on the side, and before the actual tank gets enough pressure for it to blow up, it blows this seal and blows all the nitrous out and leaks it out. So that's what happened. This thing grenaded. It blew up, and all the nitrous was poured into my trunk. There was nitrous balls all over the trunk. It was crazy. But anyhow, that happened. Now the engine's hurt. here I am, 16-year-old Pedro, saying, what do I do? And a few months prior at the racetrack, I had met this guy, significantly older than I was. He had a few Cobalts. He was like a retired professional drag racer. He had a whole collection of cars, dragsters. He had all the coolest stuff. And he had like the sponsorship or deal through GM. He had it all. Really cool guy. And we had become buddies over the months of me going to the track. He would always invite me out to events. I would hang out with him and his family. An amazing person, family, kids. So we had beautiful memories hanging out with them. But listen to this. This is where the story gets kind of crazy. So he, after I hurt the car, I remember him saying he had a spare engine, a spare Ecotech engine, the exact motor that was in my Cobalt. So I reached out to him. I said, man, I hurt this engine. Do you still got that motor? Long story short, he tells me he has this engine and he'd sell it to me for $4,500. $4,500 to me at that point was a lot of money, like a lot. I don't think I had ever saved up $4,500 all at once. So I told him I would love to buy it. Yes, I want it. And this was my mentality then. I said, I want this engine. I'm gonna put it in the car. I can keep racing right away. Once I fully pay him off, I can build my broken engine, like aftermarket pistons, rods. I'm gonna build this thing for big power. That's what's going through my mind. A 2-liter Ecotech. So I bought this engine from him. All I had at the time was like $700. So I said, listen, I'll take you $700. It's all I got. You can deduct that from $4,500. I'll give you the rest little by little. So he's like, all right, cool. I trust you. This man gives me the engine. I give him my $700. I put the engine in right away. I start driving the car. I'm happy. I'm racing it again. Within like 2 weeks, I go back to the track. He's there. I had saved up another $500. I said, here's another $500. I continue racing the Cobalt. Within a month of having this engine in the Cobalt, I blow that engine up on nitrous. And now I'm like, oh, great. I've only paid about $1,200. Now I got 2 broken engines. I won't have money to fix this car. What in the world do I do now? Again, I was working at the time, but just making the car payment, insurance, my cell phone, I had a jet ski, just whatever stupid bills I had as a young boy. I couldn't afford much more than that. And I'm like, how in the world am I gonna fix these 2 engines? Like now I'm like, what am I gonna do? So this is gonna lead to our next episode where I ended up trading the Cobalt in for a 350Z, a 2008 350Z, brand new. Traded the Cobalt in, got that. My payment went from $372 a month to $585 a month, but I had a brand new car that ran flawless instead of having to fix this broken car. So that's the option that I took. The guy who had given me that motor, I still owed him $3,000 some. Keep in mind, when I bought this 350Z, I bought this thing zero money out of pocket. I just financed it. But Nelson's the guy that was owing the money for the engine. Man, I owed him another, so I had paid him $1,200 at 45. I still owed him $3,300. And although I hadn't forgot, I just put it off. As a young, silly boy, I put it off. As a little bit of money came in, I was doing things to the 350Z. He never reached out to me. He never asked for it. I knew I owed him, but time would just pass. Then I started modifying the Z. I started going to other cars. Before long, I was 2021. My wife and I bought our first house. We bought our second house, our third house. And it was always in the back of my mind that I still owed him $3,300. I had never seen him again in person. He had never asked for it, but I just knew I owed him money and that was wrong. And just a few months ago, guys, like now at the age of 30, like a month and a half ago or so, I find him on Facebook. And right away, I'm like, hey, do you remember me? And I kind of recapped a lot of stuff. I'm like, man, like, sorry for not paying you in a timely manner, but I would love to pay you and clean my conscience. I've never owed anyone money. So long story short, about a month and a half ago, I paid Nelson his $3,300 that I owed him, and I feel great. I'm glad I did that. I hate that I owed him for that long. If I could turn back time, I wouldn't have bought that engine. $4,500 to me was a lot of money. I shouldn't have got myself tied up in that mess, but I did, and I did what was right, and that was paying them. So hope you guys enjoyed. I wish I would have had some videos to show you guys during all these explanations, but for whatever reason, that was so long ago, I don't have any videos of me racing the Cobalt or the day I bought it or much of that stuff. I just had a few pictures here, but you guys are all the best. I'll do my best to next week Thursday, or if not the one after, bring you guys maybe a shorter story of my 350Z, the next car that I owned, my second car. You guys are the best. Catch you guys soon. Later.